Everyone, today we're going to be talking about audience analysis. And audience analysis involves identifying the audience and adapting a speech to their interest, levels of understanding, attitudes, and beliefs. You're going to be taking an audience-centered approach, and this is important because how can you be effective if your audience doesn't care? Identifying the audience through extensive research is often difficult, so audience adaptation often relies on the healthy use of imagination. As with many valuable tools, audience analysis can be used to excess. Adapting a speech to an audience is not the same thing as simply telling an audience what they want to hear. An audience analysis does not mean grandstanding or kowtowing to the public. Rather, adaptation guides the stylistic and content choices a speaker makes for a presentation. Audience adaptation often involves walking a very fine line between over-adapting and under-adapting, a distinction that can be greater appreciated by understanding the general components of this skill. The communication department offers tips for analyzing an audience. So why do we care about audience analysis? It's going to help us craft our message. If we keep dumbing down our messages too much or expecting too much back from information already known, you're going to lose your audience. So you've got to think, who are the recipients? What do they already understand about your message? Think about their age, their gender, education level, position in the company, position in the school. What are their interests? What is our audience interest currently? What is my relationship to the audience? Well, here I'm your professor. What about when you're speaking to them? Are you a coworker? Are you a peer? Are you a subordinate? What information does your audience actually need? How often are we bored and given too much information and it makes us want to shut off as an audience? How do we adjust our message to your audience? And what is our audience's expectations? So when people become audience members in a speech situation, they bring with them expectations about the occasion, topic, and speaker. Violating audience expectations can have a negative effect on the effectiveness of the speech. Imagine that a local politician is asked to speak at a memorial service for a beloved former mayor. The audience will expect the politician's speech to praise the life and career of the deceased. However, if that politician uses the opportunity to discuss a piece of legislation, the audience may be offended, and the speaker would lose that credibility. Of course, there are some situations where violating the audience's expectation would be an effective strategy. Presentations that make political statements, say at the Academy Awards, do so precisely because the message's incongruity with the occasion increases the impact of that proclamation. When we get to speaking for occasion, we're going to be talking about some of those. The first question we may want to ask ourselves is what kind of audiences we might be speaking to. As your age group and given the expectations of what you may see in your lives, some of the places you may be giving speeches are weddings, if you're a best man or a maid of honor, job interviews, classroom settings. Gosh knows most of you have probably gotten up in front of your classrooms before and given some sort of presentation, or even a work presentations. So what can we kind of pull apart from these audiences? Well, if it's a wedding, could we guess about the ages? Probably going to find a lot of different ages, from the smallest child to very old folks. You're going to have different education levels. Jargon usage. You probably don't want to use a lot of jargon if you're going to a wedding, and the employment might be back and forth. Of course, if you're talking about a job interview, jargon usage might be a great way to show your knowledge. Education level, depending on the position that you're applying for, you might be able to infer some information. An audience's knowledge on a topic can vary widely given on any occasion. Therefore, communicators should find out what their audience already knows about the topic. Never overestimate the audience's knowledge on a topic. If a speaker launches into a technical discussion of genetic engineering, but the listeners are not familiar with the basic genetics, they will be unable to follow your speech and quickly lose interest. On the other hand, drastically underestimating your audience's knowledge may result in a speech that sounds condescending. Try to do some research to find out what the audience already knows about the topic. Giving a brief review of important terms and concept is almost always appropriate and can sometimes be done by acknowledging the audience and the importance of putting everybody on the same page. For example, even if the audience members were familiar with basic genetics, a brief review of the key terms and concepts at the beginning of a speech refreshes memories without being patronizing. How often do we just turn off our brain when somebody starts treating us like we're younger or stupider than we actually are? Finally, most audience members are egocentric. They are generally most interested in things that directly affect them or their community. An effective speaker must be able to show their audience why the topic they are speaking on should be important to them. Knowing audience members' attitude about a topic will help a speaker determine the best way to reach their goals. Imagine that a presentator is trying to convince a community to build a park. A speaker would probably be inclined to spend the majority of the speech giving reasons why a park would benefit the community. However, if they found out ahead of time that most of the neighbors think the park was a good idea but they were worried about safety issues, then the speaker could devote their time showing them that the park users would be safer in the park than they currently are playing in the streets. The persuasive power of the speech is thus directed at the most important impediment to the building of the park. You've also got to make sure that what you know is what your audience knows. There's a kind of an idiom or a cliche known as common sense or common knowledge. And we have to be careful about what assumptions we make about our audience because we risk alienating them if we assume too much or too little. So what is common knowledge? It's something that's known by most people, sometimes known as a mutual knowledge in a group of people. However, a lot of times that's focused around community expectations. We know here in the Bay Area, we have people from literally all over the world. What's common knowledge for me growing up in one part of the world may be very different from the common knowledge somebody else has. For example, is it common knowledge to wear shoes in a house? Really depends on your culture. But there's also a lot of other common knowledge that I kind of like to make fun of. Number one, dogs only see in black and white. Well, that's not actually true. They actually see kind of a yellow tinted world, but they do see color. Number two is that the embassies of the United States, regardless of what country they are in, somehow exist on American soil. It's absolutely not true. American bases, military bases, and American embassies do not have this special little pinpoint in another country. It's all about joint or exclusive or proprietary jurisdiction of the area, basically saying that the United States would have police action in that specific area of the country, and the country acknowledges it. One of my favorite ones is that police can't lie to you. That somehow if you find yourself in a situation where you think the cops are undercover, you can ask them, "Are you a cop? You have to tell me the truth." Yeah, that's not true at all. Cops can lie to you. It's absolutely allowed, as a matter of fact. So, in summary, consider the audience. Think about their knowledge, their attitude, their expectations of the speech, and the demographics. Finally, go ahead and go to the discussion page and think about how you might sell a controversial topic to a specific audience. Think about some of the ways you might craft your message.